Hare Krishna, everyone, and welcome back to this channel. It has been a while since we have spoken, but I am so appreciative of all of you who have been emailing me and reaching out to see how I'm doing, and also to request more content. I am always more than happy to oblige anytime my health allows. By the grace of Krishna, I am slowly getting better. I am much better than I used to be. However, most days are still somewhat of a struggle, so I do plan on posting more often, but as I always say, it just depends. Many days are very unpredictable, so I definitely wanted to get a video up here for you guys because today is the first day of the month of Kartik, or as we Vaishnavs call it, the month of Damodar, where we celebrate the beautiful pastime of Mother Yashoda binding little Krishna to a grinding mortar with her love. And to get us kicked off, I just wanted to read to you guys from Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead book, written by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. So for those of you who would like to read along, I am starting on chapter 9, where Mother Yashoda binds Lord Krishna is the title. And in this edition that I have, this chapter begins on page 80. So for those of you who are new to Krishna consciousness, you will get to hear this story, and I'm pretty sure it will captivate your heart because there's just no way that such a beautiful pastime won't. So here we go. Once upon a time, seeing that her maidservant was engaged in different household duties, Mother Yashoda personally took charge of churning butter. And while she churned butter, she sang the childhood pastimes of Krishna and enjoyed thinking of her son. The end of her sari was tightly wrapped while she churned, and on account of her intense love for her son, milk automatically dripped from her breasts, which moved as she labored very hard, churning with 2 hands. The bangles and bracelets on her hands tinkled as they touched each other, and her earrings and breasts shook. There were drops of perspiration on her face, and the flower garland which was on her head scattered here and there. Before the picturesque sight, Lord Krishna appeared as a child. He felt hungry, and to increase his mother's love, he wanted her to stop churning. He indicated that her first business was to let him suck her breast, and then she could churn butter. Mother Yashoda took her son on her lap and pushed the nipple of her breast into his mouth. And while Krishna was suckling the milk, she was smiling, enjoying the beauty of her child's face. Suddenly, the milk, which was on the stove, began to boil over. Just to stop the milk from spilling, Mother Yashoda at once put Krishna aside and went to the stove. Left in that state by his mother, Krishna became very angry, and his lips and eyes became red in rage. He pressed his teeth and lips, and taking up a piece of stone, he immediately broke the butter pot. He took butter out of it, and with false tears in his eyes, he began to eat the butter in a secluded place. In the meantime, Mother Yashoda returned to the churning place after setting the overflowing milk pan in order. She saw the broken pot in which the churning yogurt had been kept. Since she could not find her boy, she concluded that the broken pot was his work. She smiled as she thought, "This child is very clever. After breaking the pot, he has left this place, fearing punishment." After she sought all over, she found her son sitting on a wooden grinding mortar, which was kept upside down. He was taking butter from a pot which was hanging from the ceiling on a swing, and he was feeding it to the monkeys. She saw Krishna looking this way and that, in fear of her because he was conscious of his naughty behavior. After seeing her son so engaged, she very silently approached him from behind. Krishna, however, saw her coming toward him with a stick in her hand, and immediately he got down from the grinding mortar and began to flee in fear. Mother Yashoda chased him to all corners, trying to capture the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who was never approached even by the meditations of great yogis. In other words, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, who was never caught by the yogis and speculators, was playing just like a little child for such a great devotee as Mother Yashoda. Mother Yashoda, however, could not easily catch the fast-running child because of her thin waist and heavy body. Still, she tried to follow him as fast as possible. Her hair loosened, and the flowers in her hair fell to the ground. Although she was tired, she somehow reached her naughty child and captured him. When he was caught, Krishna was almost on the point of crying. He smeared his hands over his eyes, which were anointed with black eye cosmetics. The child saw his mother's face while she stood over him, and his eyes became restless from fear. Mother Yashoda could understand that Krishna was unnecessarily afraid, and for his benefit she wanted to allay his fears. Being the topmost well-wisher of her child, Mother Yashoda thought, if the child is too fearful of me, I don't know what will happen to him. Mother Yashoda then threw away her stick. In order to punish him, she thought to bind his hands with some ropes. She did not know it, but it was actually impossible for her to bind the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Mother Yashoda was thinking that Krishna was her tiny child. She did not know that the child had no limitations. There was no inside or outside of him, nor beginning or end. He is unlimited and all-pervading. Indeed, he is himself the whole cosmic manifestation. Still, Mother Yashoda was thinking of Krishna as her child. Although he is beyond the reach of all senses, she endeavored to bind him with a wooden grinding mortar. But when she tried to bind him, she found that the rope she was using was too short, by 2 inches. She gathered more ropes from the house and added to it, but still she found the same shortage. In this way, she connected all the ropes available at home, but when the final knot was added, she saw that the rope was still 2 inches too short. Mother Yashoda was smiling, but she was astonished. How was it happening? In an attempt to bind her son, she became tired. She was perspiring, and the garland on her head fell down. Then Lord Krishna appreciated the hard labor of his mother, and being compassionate upon her, he agreed to be bound up by the ropes. Krishna, playing as a human child in the house of Mother Yashoda, was performing his own selected pastimes. Of course, no one can control the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The pure devotee surrenders himself unto the lotus feet of the Lord, who may either protect or vanquish the devotee. But for his part, the devotee never forgets his own position to surrender. Similarly, the Lord also feels transcendental pleasure by submitting himself to the protection of the devotee. This was exemplified by Krishna's surrender unto his mother Yashoda. Krishna is the supreme bestower of all kinds of liberation to his devotees, but the benediction which was bestowed upon Mother Yashoda was never experienced even by Lord Brahma or Lord Shiva or the goddess of fortune. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is known as the son of Yashoda and Nanda Maharaj, is never so completely known to the yogis and speculators, but he is easily available to his devotees. Nor is he appreciated as the supreme reservoir of all pleasure by the yogis and speculators. After binding her son, Mother Yashoda engaged herself in household affairs. At that time, bound up to the wooden mortar, Krishna could see a pair of trees before him which were known as Arjun trees. The great reservoir of pleasure, Lord Sri Krishna thus thought to himself, Mother Yashoda first of all left without feeding me sufficient milk, and therefore I broke the pot of yogurt and distributed the stock butter in charity to the monkeys. Now she has bound me up to a wooden mortar, so I shall do something more mischievous than before. And thus he thought of pulling down the 2 very tall Arjun trees. There is a history behind the pair of Arjun trees. In their previous lives, the trees were born as the human sons of Kuver, and their names were Nalakuvar and Manigriv. Unfortunately, or fortunately rather, they came within the vision of the Lord. In their previous lives, they were cursed by the great sage Narad in order to receive the highest benediction of seeing Lord Krishna. This benediction/curse was bestowed upon them because of their forgetfulness due to intoxication. This story will be narrated in the next chapter. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 9th chapter of Krishna. Mother Yashoda binds Lord Krishna. We will go ahead and continue reading from here just for the sake of finishing this entire beautiful pastime. So chapter 10 begins on page 84 and is titled The Deliverance of Nalakuvar and Manigriv. The story of the cursing of Nalakuvar and Manigriv and their deliverance by Krishna under the all-blissful desire of the great sage Narad is here described. The two great demigods, Nalakuvar and Manigriv, were sons of the treasurer of the demigods Kuver, who was a great devotee of Lord Shiva. By the grace of Lord Shiva, Kuver's material opulence had no limit. As a rich man's sons often become addicted to wine and women, so these two sons of Kuver were also addicted to wine and sex. Once these two demigods, desiring to enjoy, entered the garden of Lord Shiva in the province of Kailash on the bank of the Mandakini Ganga. There they drank much and engaged in hearing the sweet singing of the beautiful women who accompanied them in that garden of fragrant flowers. In an intoxicated condition, the two demigods entered the water of the Ganga, which was filled with lotus flowers, and there they began to enjoy the company of the young girls, exactly as a male elephant enjoys female elephants within the water. While they were thus enjoying themselves in the water, all of a sudden Narad, the great sage, happened to pass that way. He could understand that the demigods Nalakuvar and Manigriv were too intoxicated and could not even see that he was passing. The young girls, however, were not so much intoxicated as the demigods, and they at once became ashamed at being naked before the great sage Narad. They began to cover themselves with all haste. The two demigods, sons of Kuver, were so much intoxicated that they could not appreciate the presence of the sage Narad, and therefore did not cover their bodies. On seeing the two demigods so degraded by intoxication, Narad desired their welfare, and therefore he exhibited his causeless mercy upon them by cursing them. Because the great sage was compassionate upon them, he wanted to finish their false enjoyment of intoxication and association with young girls, and wanted them to see the Lord Krishna face to face. He conceived of cursing them as follows. He said that the attraction for material enjoyment is due to an increase in the mode of passion. A person in the material world, when favored by the material opulence of riches, generally becomes addicted to three things: intoxication, sex, and gambling. Materially opulent men, being puffed up with the accumulation of wealth, also become so merciless that they indulge in killing animals by opening slaughterhouses, and they think that they themselves will never die. Such foolish persons, forgetting the laws of nature, become overly infatuated with the body. They forget that the material body, even though very much advanced in civilization up to the position of the demigods, will finally turn into ashes or stool. And while one is living, whatever the external condition of the body may be, within there is only stool, urine, and various kinds of worms. Thus, being engaged in jealousy and violence to other bodies, materialists cannot understand the ultimate goal of life, and without knowing this goal of life, they generally glide down to a hellish condition in their next life. Such foolish persons commit all kinds of sinful activities on account of the temporary body, and they are even unable to consider whether the body actually belongs to them. Generally, It is said that the body belongs to the person who feeds it. One might therefore consider whether the body belongs to one personally or to the master to whom one renders service. The master of slaves claims full right to the body of the slaves because the master feeds the slaves. It may also be questioned whether the body belongs to the father, who is the seed-giving master of the body, or to the mother who develops the child's body in her womb. Foolish persons are engaged in committing all sorts of sins due to the misconception of identifying the material body with the self. But one should be intelligent enough to understand to whom the body belongs. A foolish person indulges in killing animals to maintain the body, but he does not consider whether the body belongs to him or to his father or mother or maternal grandfather. Sometimes a father gives his daughter in charity to a person with a view of getting back the daughter's child as a son. The body may also belong to a stronger man who forces it to work for him. Sometimes a slave's body is sold to a master, and from that day on the body belongs to the master. And at the end of life the body belongs to the fire, because the body is given to the fire and burned to ashes. Or the body is thrown into the street to be eaten by the dogs and vultures. Before committing all kinds of sins to maintain the body, one should understand to whom the body belongs. Ultimately, it is concluded that the body is a product of material nature, and at the end it merges into material nature. Therefore, the conclusion should be that the body belongs to material nature. One should not wrongly think that the body belongs to him. To maintain a false possession, why should one indulge in killing? Why should one kill innocent animals to maintain the body? When a man is infatuated with the false prestige of opulence, he does not care for any moral instruction, but indulges in wine, women, and animal killing. In such circumstances, a poverty-stricken man is often better situated because a poor man thinks of himself in relation to other bodies. A poor man often does not wish to inflict injuries upon other bodies because he can understand more readily that when he himself is injured, he feels pain. Therefore, the great sage Narad considered that because the demigods Nalakuvir and Manigriv were so infatuated by false prestige, they should be put into a condition of life devoid of opulence. A person who has a pinprick in his body does not wish others to be pinpricked. A considerate man in the life of poverty does not wish others to be also put into that condition. Generally, it is seen that one who has risen from a poverty-stricken life and becomes wealthy creates some charitable institution at the end of his life, so that other poverty-stricken men might be benefited. In short, a compassionate poor man may consider others' pains and pleasures with empathy. A poor man is seldom puffed up with false pride, and he may be freed from all kinds of infatuation. He may remain satisfied by whatever he gets for his maintenance by the grace of the Lord. To remain in the poverty-stricken condition is a kind of austerity. According to Vedic culture, therefore, the Brahmins, as a matter of routine, keep themselves in a poverty-stricken condition to save themselves from the false prestige of material opulence. False prestige due to advancement of material prosperity is a great impediment for spiritual emancipation. A poverty-stricken man cannot become unnaturally fat by eating more and more. And on account of not being able to eat more than he requires, his senses are not very turbulent. When the senses are not very turbulent, he cannot become violent. Another advantage of poverty is that a saintly person can easily enter a poor man's house, and thus the poor man can take advantage of the saintly person's association. A very opulent man does not allow anyone to enter his house, therefore the saintly person also cannot enter. According to the Vedic system, a saintly person takes the position of a mendicant, so that on the plea of begging something from the householder, he can enter any house. The householder who has usually forgotten everything about spiritual advancement because he is busy maintaining family affairs can be benefited by the association of a saintly person. There is a great chance for the poor man to become liberated through association with a saint. Of what use are persons who are puffed up with material opulence and prestige if they are bereft of the association of saintly persons and devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead? The great sage Narad thereafter thought that it was his duty to put those demigods into a condition where they could not be falsely proud of their material opulence and prestige. Narad was compassionate and wanted to save them from their fallen life. They were in the mode of darkness, and being therefore unable to control their senses, they were addicted to sex life. It was the duty of a saintly person like Narad to save them from their abominable condition. In animal life, the animal has no sense to understand that he is naked. But Guver was the treasurer of the demigods, a very responsible man, and Nalaguvar and Manigriv were two of his sons, and yet they became so animalistic and irresponsible that they could not understand due to intoxication that they were naked. To cover the lower part of the body is a principle of human civilization, and when men or women forget this principle, they become no better than animals. Narad therefore thought that the best punishment for them was to make them immovable living entities, or trees. Trees are, by nature's laws, immovable. Although trees are covered by the mode of ignorance, they cannot do harm. The great sage Narad thought it fitting that although the brothers would be punished to become trees, by his mercy they would continue to keep their memory and be able to know why they were being punished. After changing the body, a living entity generally forgets his previous life. But in special cases, by the grace of the Lord, as with Nalaguvar and Manigriv, one can remember. Sage Narad therefore contemplated that the two demigods should remain for 100 years in the time of the demigods in the form of trees, and after that they would be fortunate enough to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face by his causeless mercy. And thus they would be again promoted to the life of the demigods and become great devotees of the Lord. After this, the great sage Narad returned to his abode known as Narayanashram, and the two demigods turned into trees known as twin Arjun trees. The two demigods were favored by the causeless mercy of Narad and given a chance to grow in Nand Maharaja's courtyard and see Krishna face to face. Although child Krishna was bound up to the wooden mortar, he began to proceed toward the twin trees in order to fulfill the prophecy of his great devotee Narad. Lord Krishna knew that Narad was his great devotee and that the trees standing before him as twin Arjun trees were actually the sons of Guver. I must now fulfill the words of my great devotee Narad, he thought. Then he proceeded through the passage between the two trees. Although he was able to pass through the passage, the large wooden mortar stuck horizontally between the trees. Taking advantage of this with great strength, Lord Krishna began to pull the rope which was tied to his limbs. Which was tied to the mortar. As soon as he pulled, the two trees, with all their branches and limbs, fell down with a great sound. Out of the broken, fallen trees came two great personalities, shining like blazing fire. All sides became illuminated and beautiful by their presence. The two purified personalities immediately came before child Krishna and bowed down to offer their respects and prayers in the following words. Dear Lord Krishna, you are the original personality of Godhead, master of all mystic powers. Learned Brahmins know very well that this cosmic manifestation is an expansion of your potencies, which are sometimes manifest and sometimes unmanifest. You are the original provider of life, body, and senses of all living entities. You are the eternal God, Lord Vishnu, who is all-pervading and the imperishable controller of everything. You are eternal time. You are the original source of the cosmic manifestation, which is acting under the spell of the three modes of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. You are living as the supersoul in all the multi-forms of living entities, and you know very well what is going on within their bodies and minds. Therefore, you are the supreme director of all activities of all living entities. But although you are in the midst of everything which is under the spell of the material modes of nature, you are not affected by such contaminated qualities. No one under the jurisdiction of the material modes can understand your transcendental qualities, which existed before the creation. Therefore, you are called the Supreme Transcendence. Let us offer our respectful obeisances unto the lotus feet of you, Lord Vasudev, the Supreme Brahm, who are always glorified by your personal internal potencies. In this material world, you make yourself known only by your different incarnations. Although you assume different types of bodies, these bodies are not part of the material creation. They are always full of transcendental potencies of unlimited opulence, strength, beauty, fame, wisdom, and renunciation. In the material existence, there is a difference between the body and the owner of the body, but because you appear in your original spiritual body, there is no such difference for you. When you appear, your uncommon activities indicate that you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such uncommon activities are not possible for anyone in material existence. You, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, caused the birth and death as well as the liberation of the living entities, and you are full with all your plenary expansions. You can bestow on everyone all kinds of benedictions. O Lord, O source of all auspiciousness and goodness, we offer our respectful obeisances unto you. You are the all-pervading Supreme Personality of Godhead, the supreme source of peace, and the Supreme Personality in the dynasty of King Yadu. O Lord, our Father, known as Kuver, the demigod, is your servant. Similarly, the great sage Narad is also your servitor, and only by their grace have we been able to see you personally. We therefore pray that we may always be engaged in your transcendental loving service by speaking only about your glories and hearing about your transcendental activities. May our hands and other limbs be engaged in your service, and our minds always be concentrated at your lotus feet, and our heads always bowed down before the all-pervading universal form of your lordship. When the demigods Nalakuvar and Manigri finished their prayers, the child Lord Krishna, the master and proprietor of Gokul, bound to the wooden grinding mortar by the ropes of Yashoda, smiled and said, "It was already known to me that my great devotee Narad Muni had shown his causeless mercy by saving you from the abominable condition of pride due to possessing extraordinary beauty and opulence in a family of demigods. He has saved you from gliding down into the lowest condition of hellish life. All these facts are already known to me. You are very fortunate, because not only were you cursed by him, but you had the great opportunity to see him. If someone is able by chance to see face to face a great saintly person like Narad, who is always serene and merciful to everyone, then immediately that conditioned soul becomes liberated. This is exactly like being situated in the full light of the sun. There cannot be any visionary impediment. Therefore, O Nalakuvar and Manigriv, your lives have now become successful because you have developed ecstatic love for me. This is your last birth within material existence. Now you can go back to your father's residence in the heavenly planets, and by remaining in the attitude of devotional service, you will be liberated in this very life." After the demigods circumambulated the Lord many times and bowed down before him again and again, and thus they left. The Lord remained bound up with ropes. to the grinding mortar. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 10th chapter of Krishna, the deliverance of Nalaguvar and Manigriv. I think this is a great spot to wrap it up because we have hit the half-an-hour mark. But that was the beautiful pastime of our Lord Krishna in the form of Damodar, baby Krishna, bound to the wooden grinding mortar by the ropes of Mother Yashoda's love. I do hope you all enjoyed that story. In fact, I'm sure you did, because all of Krishna's pastimes are nothing less than endearing. Thank you so much, everyone, for stopping by. For anyone who's new here, my name is Sheena, and this is Inspired Bhakti Yoga, where we talk about life, love of Godhead and Guru, taking our devotional potential to the next level, and of course, the law of attraction. Thank you so much again for the time you took to listen to this reading, for saying hello to our adorable little Gopal over here, who is always so eager to meet his devotees through this platform. And we will talk to you again in the next podcast. Everyone have a beautiful month of Damodar, and Hare Krishna.